Welcome to the Late Night Race Review.
Podium P3, baby.
I don't think I can comprehend what we just done. Oh my god.
Incredible, man. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. You did an absolutely fantastic job. I can't believe it.
Lando Norris wins the British Grand Prix.
That's it, mate. You've won the British Grand Prix. Well done.
Woo! Woo!
We did it! At home. Oh my god, we did it. This one means a lot, guys. Yeah, it's beautiful. Well done. Incredible, well done.
Don't forget to support the podcast by hitting those like, follow and subscribe buttons.
Welcome on into the Late Night Race Review. My name is Aidan Scott, and joining me today, as always, is Isidro Gonçalves and our panelist from across the pond, Damien Scott. How are you chaps doing this evening?
Great. Very good.
Going well, thank you.
Good. That's good to hear. So, folks, this weekend we had the British GP. And no, I won't be doing any monologue today because holy shit, we have so much to cover in today's episode. Chaps, we need to dive right on into this weekend because, oh my God, it was a roller coaster of emotions and stories. Of course, look, we'll talk about the race and break that down very shortly, but we need to start off with some F1 news. And given their current form, we need to talk about Red Bull and the rumor that's floating around the paddock about Max Verstappen having talks with Mercedes. We're jumping straight into this one. There's so many questions just in that particular topic in itself. Like, first of all, where does George Russell go? Is it even George Russell that's going to be replaced, or if it's Kimi Antonelli? And then on the back of that, first of all, I do want to get both of your opinions on this one, but on the back of that as well, apparently there was another rumor circulating that this came all off on the back of George Russell trying to sort of spur on contract talks. This is why this has all been going on. Now, obviously, look, it's a rumor. I hate rumors. I hate getting sucked into rumors, but of course, look, it's human nature. We just, when we hear a rumor and it's F1, we just go for it straight away. But, it hasn't been confirmed by Red Bull, nor has it been confirmed by Max Verstappen or anyone from the Mercedes garage. These are all just rumors that are floating around. Damien, I'm going to bring you in first on this one. What's your opinion on that whole story?
There's a lot to dive into, right?
There's so much.
What do I think about this story? I think obviously George Russell is, as you say, trying to get his future sorted for next year. So he's a bit of a victim of his own, I suppose, issue or spurring on the issue here. He obviously wants to push to get that sorted with Mercedes, and they're probably weighing their options. So yeah, he's kind of a victim of timing and chance, and Max obviously having the issues that he's having the past while with Red Bull. It's been in the back of his mind about where does my medium to long term future lie? Do I want to finish out with Red Bull in his F1 career, or does he try somewhere else for that next championship push? He obviously wants to win at least another one, I would say. So Mercedes obviously know that he's a really good driver, and any team would push to try and get Max Verstappen into their stable. So I think George might come out of this one badly if it goes that way. So who knows what's going to happen, but that's going to be a nice story that develops over the silly season all the way through the summer break.
But just a quick question out of that one. I'm sorry to sort of cut across you in this one. I have another question for you in this, right? So given that situation, first of all, what does Max Verstappen at Mercedes look like? So obviously we're all kind of thinking about this in the sense of, right, George Russell is the one to get the boot. But I mean, of course, yes, look, when you have a figure like Max Verstappen on the paddock who potentially could be available, obviously every team is foaming at the mouth to go, oh my God, let's just throw loads of money at this guy and get him on because he's pretty much the best driver on the grid. But do you not think in a way that that like Toto would then lose a lot of credibility. Like personally, I would probably lose a lot of respect for Toto, because when you look at the journey of George Russell, now for a lot of people who obviously are kind of new to F1 and stuff like that, a lot of people would probably have seen this from like Drive to Survive and the story of George Russell when he started at Williams and he worked his way up through the Mercedes Driver Academy to get then eventually get into the Mercedes seat with Lewis Hamilton. I mean, that's such a, it is such a really dedicated journey from George Russell to throw all of his eggs into this basket of Mercedes, to then, you know, all of a sudden when shiny Max Verstappen becomes available, boom, there you go, George, you're kicked to the curb. You know, it's just, it seems it in, okay, not my podcasting or presenting opinion, this is my own personal opinion, that's a really, really shitty move to make on Toto's behalf if he were to do that. Again, look, it's all rumors. We don't know about anything that's going on right now until it's official. But what do you think on that?
F1 is a cutthroat business, right? It can be all fluffy and family and nice and bringing up drivers through your academy. But at the end of the day, if something happens that they're not good enough or whatever the situation might be and a better option comes along, you're going to get cut. That's it. You know, we can see that at Red Bull is the perfect example over the years. They brought through Gasly, Albon, Lawson, Sonoda, you know, God knows who else. And, you know, they've had half a season or a handful of races and good, you're gone. And they've been in that family for a long, long time. So if the chance is there to bring in the best, F1 is a cutthroat business and they're going to do it. So while George has been there a long time and he's been building up through the years, he had a stint at Williams, through the Mercedes kind of camp or whatever you want to call it, the engine supplier to Williams. He had a good time there to build up his confidence. Yeah, once you get into that hot seat in the number one team, that's, you know, your head's in the chopping block from day one. And while it might be a little bit shitty, you know, it's going to happen at some stage. So yeah, let's see how it plays out. But you know, Toto is smart. He's not one to make a rash decision. I'd put it that way. So whatever decision he makes, it'll be right for the team.
Yeah, and like you kind of think about this, and don't worry, Isidro, I'm going to bring you in very, very shortly. I haven't forgotten about you on this one. But like, I mean, if you kind of think about it, right, you know, like, as I said, yes, you had George who has this incredible journey that he's made from Williams into Mercedes. And I know you're saying there that, like, you know, Toto wouldn't really make a harsh decision and stuff like that. I mean, are we just kind of, is it just everyone in the F1 fan base community is just jumping to the gun here and just automatically assuming that it's George who's going to get the chopping block? It's not Kimi. Like, as the question I said to you there, what does Max Verstappen and Mercedes look like? Would it be Max and Kimi or Max and George? Like, we understand that, of course, Max and George, they have a little bit of a turbulent relationship, obviously, given the last sort of couple of races. But at the end of the day, we've seen turbulent relationships in different teams on the grid, and it's still somewhat worked out, and the team has been successful. What does it look like? Who goes? Real quick, who goes? Who stays? And Isidro, I'll bring you in on this one as well.
Yeah, I don't think Toto is. He won't make a harsh decision. He'll make the right decision, and if Max is the right decision, he'll make it. Could be a harsh one, but if it's the right decision, he will do that. You know. He's quite calculating. What does Mercedes look like? I think Kimi would be the driver that stays. They've invested money and a lot of faith in him very recently. To kind of boot him out after a season potentially would be pretty detrimental to his career. Whereas George is a bit more experienced. He can bounce back a bit. There'd be plenty of teams who'd want to take him. So I think from that perspective, it would work that way. George and Max in the same team. I don't know. I think you're, as one of the lads said in the live text during the race, you're going back to the Rosberg and Hamilton kind of situation. Two number one drivers, which McLaren are having to deal with at the moment as well. So I'm not sure if that would work so well.
Of course. And Isidro, what are your thoughts on this whole topic?
It's the same that Russell would be the one going probably to Red Bull, since Red Bull would have an open seat. I could see a swap of drivers and Max and Kimi, because like Damien said, and he's right, you cannot have George and Max in the same team fighting for the same podium. That's recipe for disaster. So I would see Russell in the Red Bull, Max in the Mercedes, and Kimi just learning from Max, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and I mean, it is kind of a gamble as well, because I'm sure Toto is probably looking at the situation right now. Like you're talking about there, two drivers going for the championship. I mean, we're currently seeing that live happen before us right now. We're seeing that with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And we've seen the incidents that they've gotten into over the last several races. And we've seen how, you know, certain things have sort of unfolded. And of course, there's a few things we will need to obviously touch on about the race, and especially when it comes to Oscar's point of view as well. But, you know, like I personally, I don't think I would rule out Max and George. Like, as Damien was saying there, and we all know from different sort of rivalries, inter-team rivalries, you know, we've had Rosberg and Hamilton, we've had other situations as well. So I'm sure Toto is probably looking at this right now, and he's probably thinking to himself, yeah, let's see how this kind of plays out maybe for the next couple of weeks, maybe when we get to Spa. And then, of course, we'll do something. Because, you know, Toto, like, even last year when it came to the whole, who is he going to pick for Mercedes, it wasn't until like Spa or Hungary or whatever until we actually officially got the confirmation that Kimi Antonelli was going to be joining in 2025. So he does like to take his time with these things as well. So I definitely agree with both of those. But yeah, it's definitely one that we're always going to cover here on the late night race review. And of course, we'll make sure to cover it going into Spa and the races ahead of that as well. But we do need to move on to the next bit of news, which is Valtteri Bottas. Now, this guy, obviously, he's been a reserve driver, you know, since the start of the season. Unfortunately, he was demoted from KICK SAUBER there at the end of last season, but he has been doing testing for different teams on the grid. Obviously, Mercedes is his sort of number one reserve driver spot, and then he has done testing for McLaren, and he's done testing for other teams as well. But apparently, the rumor coming out of this weekend was that Valtteri Bottas could possibly be replacing Franco Colapinto. And I mean, given Franco Colapinto's sort of results over the last couple of weekends, and especially this weekend, firstly in qualifying straight into the barrier in Q1, he overcooked it and ruined that car. And then obviously in the race today, he DNF'd in the pit lane. He got the car stalled. And I'm sure Flavio was looking at that going, holy shit, we made a massive mistake with getting rid of Jack Doohan. But Isidro, what's your thoughts on Valtteri coming back, possibly going to Alpine?
I don't think it'd be a good move for Bottas. I mean, he finished his racing career driving for Sauber and not getting a single point. Going for the Alpine this year, that is a tractor itself. I think Bottas is probably fed up of driving those type of cars for Sauber and now this Alpine. I would probably think that he's looking better at staying at Mercedes as a reserve driver and wait for that Cadillac contract to show up in his desk rather than move to Alpine and predict that it is. We don't know if in 6 of 7 races Bottas is out of Alpine, out of Mercedes. So
yeah, that's the other thing as well you have to look at. Like, I mean, obviously after a couple of races, if he doesn't perform, he's on the chopping block again, and his hopes of possibly getting into any other team would be diminished very quickly. But that's actually a good point about Cadillac. And obviously Cadillac were here this weekend at Silverstone. You could see them in the background. I even seen that Keanu Reeves is actually doing a documentary with Cadillac at the moment, and their whole formation and coming into Formula One at the start of next season. Really looking forward to seeing that. I absolutely loved the documentary he did about Braun. That was a fantastic one. Anyone who's listened to the episode today, definitely make sure to check that out. The Keanu Reeves documentary about Braun. It was very well put together. But no, that is a good point about possibly a Cadillac position there. But it'll be interesting to see who obviously joins them there. And obviously we'll talk about that at a different stage. Damien, real quick, let's get your 2 cents in on that one. Valtteri Bottas going to Alpine.
No.
Love it. Perfect. Let's move on. That's all. Just one word answer. No need to elaborate. Love it, Damien. Perfect. All right, let's definitely move on. So obviously this weekend, again, look, coming into Silverstone, obviously all these cars and teams and stuff like that, they all brought upgrades in some way, shape or form. McLaren brought an upgrade to their side, or not their side pods, but their floor. Red Bull brought an upgrade to their floor. And then also they brought an upgrade to Max's rear wing. And we obviously all seen how that kind of turned out. Obviously it was an absolute rocket ship on the straight lines. But in the race, we obviously seen that he was playing a little bit of Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift with that car. But then also as well, it looked like going into this weekend, Red Bull only put this upgrade on Max's car. Yuki got Max's floor from Austria. Again, of course, look, we'll talk about Yuki in a few minutes. Bit interesting on that one. But then Aston Martin came into this weekend as well with a new floor and engine cover upgrade. And we definitely seen a good bit of performance out of Aston Martin this weekend. Now, people could argue that because of the conditions of the race, yeah, maybe it was luck, and you know, it was just by pure luck that Stroll got to P4 and P3 for the duration he did, and Alonso's back and forward and stuff like that. But yeah, a ton of upgrades coming into this weekend, so definitely a lot on the line with these upgrades. But anyway, look, going into qualifying, just a quick sort of overview on that one. Colapinto, as we said, straight into the barrier during Q1. He obviously overcooked that, and compared to Pierre Gasly, he got into Q3. Just a real quick talking point on this one. Damien, I'm going to bring you back in. Franco Colapinto, what is your opinion on him? I mean, is this it? Is he done? Is next weekend or going into Spa? Are we going to see an announcement?
Who knows with Briatore? It obviously hasn't gone any better for that second Alpine seat since they moved out Doohan. That car, as Cedro was saying there, is pretty poor overall. Though Gasly seems to have been doing a good job in the past couple of weeks. That maybe says more about Gasly as a driver than the car.
Yeah.
It's so hard to call with that guy who's at the helm now. Like, they could pull him out and put in somebody, but what are they gaining? So I would let Colapinto finish out the season and hopefully get some experience behind him, because he's a good driver underneath that all. He's still pretty young and inexperienced, but they've given him this far into the season. I think he probably has more races now than Doohan had. You know, they're kind of in a, you know, situation where it doesn't really matter. So yeah, I would give him till the end of the season, but yeah, he hasn't really done any better than Doohan, which he was a bit harsh, kicking him out after 4 or 5 races, whatever it was. So yeah, let's see how it goes, but it's a bit of a wild card with Flavio Briatore making those decisions. Let's see.
Do you know what, Damien? I don't mean this in a bad way. I mean this somewhat in a good way. Whatever you do, don't ever become an F1 team principal. You've too much faith in the rookies.
Well, look, they're in that situation where if you have a rookie in your team, you either back them or you take them out and you put in an experienced driver. So it's you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. But you have to make the decision and either stick with it or, you know, do it early and get rid. But again, if you're really in that situation, it has to be a case that, okay, you believe in this driver. You know, we can't get an experienced driver. It's somebody we want to get in for, you know, the long term. Mm-hmm. But yeah, again, it's a results-based business. I don't think Alpine would have had any right to think they would be anywhere near the top of the grid. So if you're bringing in a rookie, you give him time. That would be my viewpoint anyway. Yeah.
Of course. No, that's very, very true. But moving on there, unfortunately, both Saubers didn't make it out of Q1, but we know obviously what the result of one of those Saubers was in the race, if you've seen the title and thumbnail and everything of today's episode. But then moving on, we had Ollie Behrman, who received a 10-place grid penalty, and he also got 4 penalty points on his license for crashing under the red flag. Isidro, what are your thoughts on that one? Do you think that was a little bit too harsh for Ollie Behrman? I mean, they were really bad conditions and he blocked under braking, and of course we know what happened, but 10 places and 4 penalty points.
Yeah, no, I think it's it's fair. It's not the first time that Behrman does this, looking at flags and looking at guidelines rather than following the flags. So I think this was definitely an eye-opener for him. Make sure that you pay attention, because every other driver had the same conditions. So, and they look at the flags. So yeah, it's harsh but fair at the same time. It's not his first time, so there's no excuse.
Of course. Yeah, no, it just kind of feels though that this guy has had such a roller coaster of a season. Like, you see all these really great moments that not Hajar. I'm looking at my next notes here. What Ollie Behrman has had, like, you've seen all these really good results, getting really great points, you know, putting in blistering laps. And then you have all of these moments and these penalties and these crashes and these mistakes. And of course, he made a lot of mistakes in the race today as well. Almost took out his own teammate in the middle of the race as well. You know, it just seems that like from weekend to weekend, there just seems to be a little bit of a lack of consistency when it comes to Ollie Behrman. I don't mean to be too harsh when I say that, but just from the outside, if someone were looking in on this, brand new to the season, brand new to Formula One, they'd be like, yeah, this guy's a little bit inconsistent here. I just feel that he needs to catch a break of a nice couple of weekends to get him back into the rhythm. But then moving on from Ollie Behrman, we had Tsunoda, who was out in Q2. Again, disappointing weekend for Tsunoda. We've talked about the whole second Red Bull seat so many times. I don't think there's any more need to talk about this. I don't think any of us really know what's happening there. Who do they replace Yuki with? But then also as well, we had Hajar again this weekend out of Q2, not making it into Q3. And then of course, finishing off the qualifying on Saturday, Max Verstappen putting in a stonking lap with that Red Bull. Of course, it was dry conditions. As we said, they brought upgrades to his rear wing, and there was a few upgrades as well that they brought to the floor. That car was an absolute rocket ship. I think on the Delta and also on the data that was coming back on the pit wall, I think it was that he was 7 or 8 kilometers faster than the McLarens on the main straights. Like, that is just nuts. I know that doesn't seem like a lot to somebody, but that is the difference of night and day in Formula One. That is a rocket ship of a car. But of course, we know what happened when it came to Verstappen. But then moving on, we had McLaren P2 and P3 with Oscar and Lando rounding out the top 3 there. But we do need to talk about the race, and oh my God, guys, where do we even start with this one? It was just, do you know what? It felt like a circus. It just felt like an entire shit show from the start. It was terrible conditions. Cars were flying all around the place. People were going around spinning in circles. I felt at one stage like one car was trying to reenact that Homer Simpson meme, you know, where he's on the floor and he's like, whoop, 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 whoop. Just spinning around in circles. Holy shit. But of course, look, we need to break this race down. First of all, 6 laps in to the race, and we had 3 DNFs. We had Liam Lawson, who crashed with Ocon. Kind of want to get your guys' opinion on this one real quick. But then, of course, we also had Colapinto, who DNF'd in the pits, and then Bortoleto, who crashed on lap 4 because he was on slick tires. But going back to that Lawson and Ocon crash, guys, what's your opinion on that one? Isidro, I'm going to bring you back in again. Who do you think was at fault there?
I think there's no one at fault. I mean, on that single turn, there was Tsunoda on the left, Ocon in the middle, and Lawson on the right, both trying to turn left on the corner. And in those conditions, Lawson couldn't see who was on his left. Ocon, he had no place to go. I mean, he's in the middle, in the sandwich. So it just, it was unfortunate for Lawson that he was the one who had to go. And Ocon managed to survive, drive a few more laps.
And Damien, do you agree with that one? Do you think it was just a racing incident, or do you think Lawson knew what he was doing?
Yeah, I think it's a racing incident that, you know, Lawson could only see Ocon. He wasn't aware of Tsunoda, but at the same time, I think Lawson maybe could have tapped the brakes a little bit and just got himself out of that situation. So he was maybe a little bit too bullish in that corner. You know, so it's early in the race and it's wet. Sometimes you just have to, you know, preserve the car and just stay in the race. Yeah, it's just one of those things. He obviously didn't know that Tsunoda was on the left of Ocon. Ocon couldn't go anywhere. So yeah, bit of a racing incident, but again, I think Lawson might have, with a wiser head on the shoulders, might have just pulled out of that one and, you know, lived to race another day. But yeah, it is what it is, and he was straight out.
Could both of you guys say it was a bit of a dick move that he made?
No, that dick move is reserved to another driver later in the conversation.
Oh, I'm very interested to hear about this one. You're taking away those dick points away from Mr. King Dick, Isidro.
Yeah, definitely. At least today.
Anyway, moving on there, guys. So we had, as I said, we had the lap 2 incident with Lawson. We had Colapinto, who DNF'd in the pits, and then Bortoleto, who crashed on lap 4. So within 6 laps of the race starting, we had 3 DNFs. at the very start there. But then moving on, we had the safety car that eventually came out on lap 14 because it was absolutely bucketing down Jurassic Park weather. And then, of course, on lap 18, Hadjar had his little crash. So then that meant that both Racing Bulls were out of the race. Definitely a bad day for Racing Bulls. And then, of course, we had the safety car restart. So this is definitely a topic we do need to talk about because there's a lot of back and forward sort of opinions and mixed opinions on this particular one. So first of all, at the safety car restart, obviously Oscar took off and then Max decided to pull another Need for Speed, Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift and completely spun his car. And then he was down to 11th. Oh my God, it was absolutely hilarious to see that. I know that sounds like such a dick thing to say, but I was like on the edge of my seat going, what the hell is happening here? And then finally, out of the big sort of talking points there at the start of the race, Antonelli DNF'd on lap 25 or 26, so it was. So there was a lot of cars who were out of the race. I think there was 15 cars left by lap 25 or 26. But going back to that safety car restart, Oscar Piastri braking, and then the lights going off in the safety car. A lot of controversy around that one. Damien, what are your opinions on that? Oscar Piastri receiving that 10-second penalty. You think it was a bit too harsh, or what's your thoughts?
No, I think it was fair enough. There's never any one thing in these situations, right? There's always a couple of things or a little chain reaction that make up these incidents. I think maybe the safety car was called in a little bit late. They could have called it a little bit earlier. They probably should have went another lap rather than trying to duck in right at the end. So there was that. I'm sure he saw on his screen on his steering wheel that, safety car ending. So that probably triggered him a little bit. But at the same time, his deceleration was way too much. I think they were saying he slowed down by something like 100 miles per hour. He went from 220 kph down to 50, which is pretty crazy. So, yeah, that's excessive braking, pretty erratic, and yeah, I don't think he can really have too many gripes about it. I think he might have been a little bit moody because he was getting mixed signals from the McLaren pit wall while they were saying, "Oh yeah, it's probably a little bit harsh. We're going to talk to them about it." And then a little while later, he's asking for positions back, and there was other radio messages and they were just like no. So I don't think McLaren handled it that well in terms of their communication to Oscar. So I could see why he was angry because he wasn't getting the right information. But I think when he looks back on it afterwards, he might calm down a little bit and go, all right, fair enough. Yeah, it was a bit of a dick move.
Yeah,
but
no, totally agree. But like, I just want to quickly go back there on what you mentioned there about the whole, like he was asking to swap positions back. I mean, where does that even come from? Like, why? Like, the question I want to put out to Oscar, if he's a listener of this show, but I mean, why should Lando get penalized or punished because of your potential mistakes? Like, I know obviously you think that you're not in the wrong, but the FIA, they have said that you were in the wrong, you've received a penalty, it is what it is. So why should Lando have to suffer? I mean, I literally thought that we were going to go back to a Hungary 2024 situation where Lando was ahead of the Grand Prix. He was halfway down the track from Oscar Piastri, and then they said, oh, swap the positions back. So do you know what? I am so happy that McLaren stood behind Lando Norris on this one. I mean, especially because, it's the British Grand Prix. I mean, if they told to swap those positions back, holy shit, Lando would have had a meltdown. The fans would have been in uproar when it came to that situation. But what is the thinking process of that? How in any way, shape or form do you feel that it's justified to swap the positions back? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think it comes down to the information he was given as well. So, that's where that comes from. He wasn't given the full picture as such. So from his perspective, he feels obviously he was harsh. It was a harsh call and he feels hard done by. And he's like, okay, team, if you think this is, an unjust penalty, swap us around because I was in P1. I was pushing. It was my race. So from that perspective, I can see why he said what he said. He was probably chancing his arm a little bit and pushing his luck to ask that. But yeah, no, I don't think the McLaren wall would have ever actually followed through with the request as such. It was a bit too much to ask. And yeah, as you say there, the Lando Norris fan base would have absolutely had a meltdown if they did that in the British Grand Prix. So yeah, that's yeah, it would have been crazy to try and reverse those cars.
As you can see, I'm totally on the side of Lando Norris this weekend with my lovely Lando Norris energy drink. There was no fighting that one. If Oscar would have given that place back, I would have got tickets over there to Silverstone, and I would have shouted in his face, be like, "Here, you! Who do you think you are? You don't know me." But no,
you don't have your own drink.
Yeah, exactly. You don't even have a Monster Energy drink. Who the hell do you think you are? But Isidro, bringing you in on that one, what are your thoughts on the whole controversy there?
Well, Piastri is the dick here.
I love it. Brilliant.
And definitely the stewards agree with me because they gave him a 10 seconds penalty. And so, yeah, that was a dick move. He hit the brakes too hard. And while that was not the cause for Verstappen's spin, it definitely make a spark in Verstappen's brain that he just went crazy. And if the car was already with bad grip, it just that didn't help, and that was the end of it. It was the end of not the end of the race for Verstappen, but it was the end of the race for the fight for podium.
No, definitely. And it was such a pity because you could even see there, like at the start of the race, like that whole battle between Max and Oscar, like it was such a really, really good battle. It was very intense because you could even see at some stages, like when you're kind of coming out of Maggots and Beckett's, you could see Max, he was like the rear of the car was sliding each time he was coming out of those series of S's, going back onto the hangar straight. Every lap coming around, Oscar was slowly gathering momentum. Eventually he got the DRS on him, and then he passed him. But then you had that whole battle between Lando and Max. Like it was such a great battle there. And like, I think given everything else that was kind of happening, like obviously we know when it comes to wet races and rain, there's always going to be chaos. But at the same time too, you always do want to see some hard racing at the top of the grid, like seeing these little battles going on. But obviously, after everything that happened, there was just a complete wild card of everybody was all over the place. I mean, sure, picking Stroll was up at what, P4 and P3, and Damien was quick to comment on my little comment in the live chat there when I said I will shave my head if he gets P3. But I mean, that was such a random and unique race that we had. But it was such a shame to see Max just drop off way back down to like P11 or P10. Now, ultimately, look, he did finish, what was it, P5 or P6, I think it was, or something like that. But like, P5. Yeah, P5. Yeah, he finished in P5, but it was such a disappointment. And then going off of the back of that one, I know this is definitely a weekend to forget for Red Bull in general, but definitely a weekend to forget for Max Verstappen. And also coming off of the back of an already disappointing weekend that he had in Austria, getting absolutely obliterated by Kimi Antonelli. I mean, I can possibly see why these rumors are starting to look like reality, that they're actually going to be concrete news. You know, like I'm pretty sure that this guy he's in talks. He'll probably see out the rest of the season with Red Bull, and then eventually next season, I'd say he probably will go, because it's just every weekend. Like, even though, yes, they did bring these upgrades for his wing and stuff, but he was still having a lot of difficulty with the car. And I think he's just getting frustrated now. Every weekend, there's always a problem compared to when you seen the 2023 Red Bull. Every weekend, there was no complaints. It was completely dominant. But still in 2024, when he said there were problems, they made the upgrades, they got it done, and he was off into the distance. You know, he had a really good season. Bit close now with Lando, but he still had a good season. Good-ish, yes. That's it. Good-ish season. So it was a bit of a shame to see that. I would have liked to see more fighting there with the top three. But then moving on from that, of course, look, on lap 43, everybody, or not, was it lap 43? Yeah, lap 43, everybody decided to jump on the slicks. Of course, we seen George Russell, who pulled the trigger a little bit too early with that one, and he came in there a couple laps before. And of course, he went spinning off into the gravel and off into a different circuit that wasn't Silverstone. But then everyone came in on 43 when everyone seen that the track was drying out. And then, of course, we got some really, really good racing there. But then that brings us on to the next team we need to talk about. I'm just going to say it again. Can we just, I want to try and make this as loud as I possibly can, but I don't want to blow off the eardrums of everyone who's listened to this, and I don't want to scare my wife when I say this. Nico Hulkenberg, P3 baby, let's go. Sauber on the podium. Guys, what are your thoughts on that one? Damien, bring you in first on that. Just that whole breakdown of that whole build up to him getting that podium. What are your thoughts?
I'll hand over to my Sauber teammate on this one, Cedro. He's well embedded in the team. I'd like to hear his.
Okay, Mr. Sauber, I should have brought you in first. I apologize. What are your thoughts?
It was great. I mean, it was 239 races that it took for Nico to get to the podium.
Yeah,
and he totally deserved this weekend from P19 to P3.
Yeah,
it was great. And we've seen Sauber race after race. They've been improving. The proof of that was the last Austria with Bortoleto and Hulkenberg making points. So they definitely are doing things right in the Sauber team. And the podium today was just the proof that Sauber is doing something right. And it felt very good to see Hulkenberg in the podium after all these years. He truly deserves that. And keeping up like this, I'm sure that Audi would be a team to watch next year.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's do you know what? And the question I want to ask you is, Idro, did you shed a tear? Did you shed a tear when you see them on there?
No, not enough for that.
Don't lie. You're with friends here. It's okay. You're with friends.
It's a safe space. It's a safe space.
It is a safe space. You can tell us how you really feel. But no, you're totally right, though. I mean, that was their first podium, like Sauber's first podium since 2012. That is just incredible. Now, look, there probably will be people who will throw this comment out and say it was just pure luck. It was a wet race. But you know what? I don't give a shit. Sauber are on the podium. They built up so many points with that one. I just want to quickly open up my F1 app here and kind of look at this one, because I'm nearly sure that they're now, was it sixth in the constructors, I think. They've now leapfrogged ahead of Racing Bulls. Hang on, I'm going to try and pull this up here. Teams. Yeah, so KICK SAUBER are currently on 41 points in sixth in the constructors. They've leapfrogged Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, Haas, and Alpine. That is just fantastic to see, because obviously if they can kind of keep on the back of that and kind of hold that position, like obviously they're not going to be able to do it for every single race, but if they kind of keep that in there, that's a huge chunk of earnings that they're going to get at the end of this season going into the Audi project. Because I think seeing Audi come into F1, a lot of people are excited for that one. A lot of people are excited to see Audi come into F1. We've seen Audi in the World Endurance Championship. They were dominant in that championship. They're dominant, or well, they were dominant or somewhat very competitive in the rally scene as well. They're a really, really strong team in any sport that they've come to. So we're really excited to see this, but it would just be great to see that huge influx of cash just go to Audi and see them be up there with the likes of like McLaren and Ferrari and Red Bull and all that kind of stuff. But look, regardless of that one, hats off to Nico Hulkenberg. That was such an incredible race and such a great moment to see that. I don't know, did you guys see the clip I sent into the WhatsApp group? Nico's daughter, he's seen that was that was priceless.
that was well deserved, have to say. Great race for him.
No, it definitely was. And like, you could even then see the difference of that. Now, obviously, look, everyone at this stage, if you've watched the race, we've seen that Lando Norris, he came in P1, Oscar was P2, and it was great that obviously Oscar won at his home race, British Grand Prix. Of course, you always want to win that if you're a British driver. It's such a monumental task to try and achieve, and there's so much pressure on the back of your shoulders as a British driver to win that. But you could just see the difference in their faces with when it came to Oscar and when it came to Nico. And I think, do you know what? I even said it to my wife as well. I think it's just a case of that when you become, or when you're at the top of the constructors or the drivers championship, this dickhead mentality starts to come in. Like, you just seen like Oscar's reaction in his face. He just got P2 in Formula One. It's the pinnacle of motorsport. You are the second best driver in the world on that day. And you see Nico Hulkenberg, he was crying at one stage when he was in the car. to get a podium. Like, it just kind of goes to show the difference of how, I'm not saying that Piastri is ungrateful or anything like that, but it just goes to show how much it means when you get that first podium compared to, I don't know how many podiums Oscar has gotten now, but it's not the same as what Max Verstappen has gotten. And he just seems like a little bit ungrateful for this one. Would you agree with me, guys, on that one? Damien, I'll bring you firstly back on this one.
You kind of have to look at the two types of drivers, right? Hulkenberg's been around for a long, long time. He has 240 or 239 races now under his belt. He's kind of from a very different generation. Oscar is a driver that has been, but I'm not sure what age he is now. I can't remember exactly, but since he's a very young kid, he's been, basically bred for one thing only, is to be a Formula One driver. So
yeah,
he's busting his guts in the first couple of seasons to be a world champion. So
yeah,
they're kind of two different stages in their career, So I think that's where that comes from, But yeah, it was fantastic race from Hulkenberg. Yeah, well deserved after all those races to finally get a podium. I am very surprised that he'd never gotten a podium before, but I guess with the teams that he's been through over the years, some of those times it was bad timing. In what was previously a decent team. I think, was he in Renault for a while, if I remember correctly as well?
Yeah, he was at Renault.
As they were just kind of dipping. They were previously kind of good. So yeah, just bad time in a few spots in his career, but yeah, delighted for him.
But I seen Kevin Magnussen was back in the paddock there this weekend, and he was actually, I think he was talking to Nico after the race, and it's just like when you kind of flash back to when Hulkenberg was at Renault and Magnussen was with Haas, and that, you probably know exactly what I'm about to say here, but that interview at the very end of that race, I think it was in Hungary, and you just seen Magnussen when Hulkenberg came up to him, he was just like, great sportsmanship, and then Magnussen's like, go suck my balls. I wonder if Magnussen was saying that to him in the paddock this afternoon. I know you won the race, but go suck my balls. But yeah, Isidro, just your 2 cents on that real quick. Just that whole, like, the difference between Oscar and Nico there. Even my wife said it in a very true way. It just felt like a kind of shit on that whole situation there. Do you agree with me on that one?
Yeah, I think it was. And then again, Oscar is always very cold, nerves of steel, so doesn't really celebrate as much. He's just, for him, it's just another day in the office and that's it. While for Hulkenberg, it was a podium, but it felt like it was his first victory.
No, definitely. So it felt probably like he won the championship.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Hulkenberg, he knows that it's very unlikely to get another podium in this year or next year, while Piastri, again, just, I'll get it next time.
No, for sure. You can definitely see that. Just another day in the office for McLaren. But look, guys, if you haven't seen the race, or maybe you have, to basically summarize the British GP, that Family Guy quote, it is raining sideways, or essentially it was like Jurassic Park. Cars were all flying around the place. It was just an absolute shit show of crashes and things going on. But yeah, it was definitely an exciting one. So to quickly run you through your top 10 for the British GP, of course, we had Lando Norris claiming that P1. Congratulations to Lando. I know he's always wanted to win that one. He missed out on it last season, but of course he won it this year. So congratulations to him. Oscar Piastri, Mr. Dick there, coming in P2. I know he's definitely everyone's dick of the day for this episode. But of course, Nico Hulkenberg in P3. I just seen Isidro there shaking his head. I'm so interested to hear what his dick of the day is. But anyway, moving on, we had Lewis Hamilton in P4, Max Verstappen P5, Pierre Gasly P6, Lance Stroll claiming some points there in P7. Jeez, he was getting very close there to that P3. Thank God he didn't get that. And then we had Alexander Albon in P8, Fernando Alonso in P9. Thankfully, he did manage to claim some points, so double points for Aston Martin this weekend. And then finally, rounding up the top 10, then we had George Russell. If you didn't see today's race, we had 5 DNFs. We had Liam Lawson, Colapinto, Bortoleto, Hadjar, and Kimi Antonelli. That was all of your top 10 and DNFs for the British GP. I know I didn't really talk about Ferrari this weekend. There just wasn't really much to talk about. They got P4 and P14. That's what it is. That was Ferrari. And if you're a Ferrari fan, I do apologize. But moving on to our driver of the day, our dick of the day, and our loser of the day, Isidro, I really want to know what your driver and dick of the day and all that kind of stuff is. So go, give it to me. What is it?
So driver of the day, we all know it's Nico Hulkenberg.
Of course.
That's a given. Dick of the day, Oscar Piastri, of course.
Yeah.
And then loser Leclerc. He from P6 to P14. Yeah, he was a weekend to forget.
Yeah. I seen you shaking your head there. I thought your dick of the day was going to be somebody else.
No. Piastri.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with all of those. Damien, who is your driver of the day, dick of the day, and loser of the day? Give it to me.
Driver of the day, has to be Nico, right? There was a couple of very close shouts. I think Pierre Gasly had a fantastic weekend, and he finished in P6. And Lance Stroll as well. Big shout out to him. P7. I think he qualified pretty much near the bottom. So
I'm just going to cut across you there. You were about to give your driver of the day to Lance Stroll.
No, I was not. No. It has to be Nico.
Good, because I was about to send a text to Dave and Owen being like, I think we need to replace our across the pond panelist.
Hey, just giving North America a bit of backing here, right?
Nobody cares, Damien. Nobody cares. I'm doing that SpongeBob meme right now. Nobody cares.
Gasly and Stroll, they had a fantastic race, both of them, and fair play to them. They got the right tires at the right time. It was, good calls from their teams. But yeah, Nico for driver of the day, dick of the day, yeah, Oscar. There's no real arguing about anybody else there, I think. Loser of the day for me was the Racing Bulls, a double DNF from crashes that were somewhat preventable, I think. Both were drivers, basically bashing into somebody else. So, yeah, there was obviously lots of other losers, as you say. Ferrari had a bit of a bad day from a decent qualifying from their perspective. All the rookies, basically, apart from Berman, crashed out. So, all the rookies had a bad day too. But yeah, with a wet weather event like that, it's going to be a little bit of a crazy race. But yeah, but the Racing Bulls were a bit their own downfall was their own issues there, really.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with all those observations, chaps. I definitely do. But my driver of the day was, of course, like all of you guys, Nico Hulkenberg. You have to give it to him. P19 all the way up to P3. Just round of applause for Nico Hulkenberg on the Sauber team there. My dick of the day, I'm giving it to Oscar Piastri. I was going to give it to King Dick this weekend, but I'm giving it to Oscar Piastri for being a moany little bitch. That's what I'm giving it to him for. And then loser of the day, I'm going to give it to Christian Horner, because I think definitely after this weekend, I'd say Helmut Marko is like, time to get your resume updated, buddy. And also Max is definitely looking elsewhere going out of this weekend. So Christian Horner, you're my loser of the day. So folks, that brings us on to our predictions game. So this is the weekend where Damien is coming off of the back of a loss to P1. Owen is currently in P1 in the championship, and this is Damien's potential weekend where he can hopefully claim back the top spot. So let's take a quick look and see our results from the British GP. So Dave, he had his top three as Norris, Piastri and Hamilton. So he claimed 2 points from his top three there. And then also his flop was Bortoleto outside of the top 10. And I just want to get clarification here from our FIA steward, Isidro. He DNF'd, so that is 0 points.
Yeah, correct.
Perfect. We got the FIA on speed dial here. And then we had Hadjar as a surprise in the top 10, and he DNF'd, so that's 0 points. Am I correct, Isidro?
Yeah.
Perfect. So that's 2 points there for Dave. Now, Owen, the reigning champion at the moment, for the current moment, who knows? Maybe it could all change by the end of this episode. He had Lando in P1, which he did get a point for, Piastri in P2, and Russell in P3. So that was 2 points from that. Unfortunately, he made a bit of an error on this one. He had Hulkenberg outside the top 10 as his flop, but then he had Hadjar inside the top 10. So unfortunately, that was 2 points just for Owen. Now, Isidro, do you want to run me through your predictions?
Yeah, I had Piastri first, Max second, and Russell third. and then Bortoleto outside top 10, and Adjar inside top 10. Disasters yet again.
Bit of a Bortoleto weekend. Sauber might have come in P3, but you're keeping those traditions alive.
Yeah, sadly, that's true.
I apologize. Who knows? It could all go pear-shaped for me as well. Who knows? But looking at my predictions, I had Norris in P1. I did get a point for Piastri in P2. Let's go. But I had Russell in P3, so I got 0 points for that. Then I had Bortoleto outside the top 10, so 0. And then I had Hadjar as my surprise inside the top 10. So I came out with 2 points. And then Damien, do you want to run me through your points? Or your predictions again, sorry.
Piastri P1, Norris P2, and Leclerc P3. So 0 there. And Bortoleto outside the top 10 was my flop. And my surprise was Hadjar inside the top 10. So yeah, not a great weekend overall there. 0.
Oh, that's a tough weekend, Damien. I thought this was meant to be the comeback. Was this meant to be the comeback weekend? No? But it does look like at the moment that Owen is still currently on 22 points. Then Damien is currently sitting on 18 points. We have Dave gaining very, very closely there on 16 points. And then also myself on 14 and Isidro on 8 points. So it's definitely getting close there. I think definitely, Damien, you have to keep a lookout now for Dave and see what he's up to now over the next couple of weekends. But moving on anyway, we do need to talk about next weekend. We have not actually next weekend, sorry, 2 or 3 weeks from now. I think it's the weekend of the 25th. So we've got a couple of weeks of a break here before we get into Spa. So Dave did send in his predictions. He has Piastri, Norris and Verstappen P1, P2 and P3. His flop is going to be Stroll outside the top 10 and Leclerc inside the top 10. And you know what? I kind of think that this is going to be the recurring theme for this one. I think this is definitely a banker of 2 points for everybody for going into Spa. But anyway, Owen, he did actually manage to send in his predictions just there now. He has Norris in P1, Piastri in P2 and Max in P3. And then his flop is Hulkenberg outside the top 10 and Leclerc inside the top 10. Isidro, what are your predictions for Spa?
For Spa, I have Piastri P1, Norris P2, and Max P3. And then my flop is Stroll outside top 10 and Leclerc inside top 10.
Awesome. I like it. Hopefully you'll be able
5
to...
points there.
Yeah, exactly. Fully predicted 5 points for Isidro. I mean, look, if you do get 5 points, that would bring you up to, where are you at the moment? 8 points. It'd bring you up to probably past me or in and around where I am. Who knows?
5 points at the moment is not enough to pass you. That's how bad I am.
I know I can't do quick math. I have to rely on Damien's Excel formulas in here. But anyway, moving on there for my predictions. I have Norris, Piastri and Max as my P1, P2 and P3. And then I have Stroll outside the top 10 and Leclerc inside the top 10. Who guessed that?
What a surprise.
What a surprise. And then finally, Damien, what are your predictions for Spa? Could this be the race where you claim back P1?
Well, yeah, it was just a copy and paste of you, so I've Norris and Max.
Oh, you're just copying what I'm doing now because I got some points.
Well, it seems to turn out that way for this race. So it's the same, yeah.
Oh, it just happens to turn out that way.
Max, and then Stroll outside top 10 and Leclerc inside top 10.
Okay, well, that's good. I like that. Hopefully, it doesn't backfire for you.
I need 5 points our next race.
Yeah, but no, it's definitely getting very, very close there in the predictions championship. But guys, look, thank you so much again, as always, for joining me this afternoon to talk about the British GP. It was definitely a roller coaster of emotions and definitely a very, very interesting weekend. Of course, look, we do have a bit of a break now between now and the Belgian Grand Prix, which is going to be on the 25th to the 27th of July. So I believe that is 2 weeks. Yeah, roughly 2 weeks before we're actually back here with another episode. So guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
No
it was
problem.
a pleasure, and we'll talk again in 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss you. Don't know what I'm gonna do now with myself for the next couple of weeks. I'm just gonna have to jump on a Zoom call next weekend, just out of boredom. Hey guys, how are you? I miss you.
Where are
We'll have
you?
a season then, will we?
Which?
we'll have a chat about silly season next week.
We could just do an episode next weekend, just talking about blatant rumors and just bitch and, you know, spread gossip and stuff. That could be a great episode. Who would listen to that? Folks, in the comments, if you would listen to that, definitely leave a like and tell us if you would listen to us just bitching and moaning about rumors and stuff. Let's get your feedback on that one.
Yeah, let's take up all the rumors, all the silly season stuff, and yeah, go for it.
Yeah, definitely. Or we could all get F125 and I'll play that next weekend if you're all free. Just saying. Just saying. I have it already. Just saying. But no,
battle it out on the virtual racetrack.
That's it. We'll battle it out there. But anyway, guys, listen, thank you so much again, as always. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. It was great to talk to you, and can't wait to catch up when we see all of the action at Spa. I always love Spa. One of my favorite tracks of the calendar, and just a track in general that I love. Just that Eau Rouge. Oh my God. Amazing. Absolutely incredible. So really, really looking forward to that. But as always, folks, if you did enjoy today's episode, definitely make sure to hit that like button. Smash it so hard that you just generate so many different likes, because all those likes will go to another Nico Hulkenberg P3 or P2. So smash that like button as much as you can. And then, of course, if you like all of our content here, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on future episodes of the show. Until next time, folks, when we see you in Spa, have a great start of your Monday, great start of your week, or whatever day you're listening to this. And then we will all see you for the Belgian Grand Prix. Adios.